The crowd was louder than thunder. Thousands of alien voices filled the great arena, their roars echoing against the metal walls. In the middle of it all stood a human covered in grease-stained armor that looked like it belonged more to a workshop than a battlefield. His name was Rylan, a mechanic who had never once dreamed of standing in front of an alien empire. He had been dragged here against his will, forced into the role of prisoner and spectacle. But what he saw chained beside him made his heart pound harder than the sound of the crowd. The creature was unlike anything he had seen before. Towering at twice his height, its fur was thick and black with streaks of glowing red scars that pulsed as if alive. Its claws were sharp enough to slice steel, its eyes glowing like molten fire. The aliens called it the feline predator, a beast enslaved for war, forced to fight for their amusement. Heavy chains bound its wrists, ankles, and neck, and the ground shook when it moved even an inch. But when Rylan looked past the glowing eyes, he did not see rage alone. He saw pain. He saw exhaustion. He saw a creature that did not want to be here, just like him. The announcer's voice boomed from above, speaking in a tongue Rylan barely understood. The crowd cheered wildly, stamping their feet. Rylan realized the show was about to begin. The aliens wanted blood. They wanted to see the beast tear apart its new human companion. His hands trembled, but not from fear alone. He was a mechanic, not a soldier. His eyes darted toward the chains that clinked with each movement of the predator. The links were strong, made of alien steel, but to Rylan's eye they also had weaknesses. He had spent his life fixing broken engines and patching together wrecks. To him, every lock, every machine, every shackle had a flaw. The beast roared suddenly, yanking against the chains, and the crowd went wild. Rylan felt the heat of its breath on his skin. The aliens thought the predator would crush him in seconds. They thought this was the end of a weak human. But instead of running, instead of raising his fists in a fight he could never win, Rylan stepped closer. His voice was low, shaking, but firm. "I know you don't want this," he whispered. "I know you're not just a weapon." The predator's eyes flicked down to him, and for a moment, its muscles stilled. The crowd grew confused, shouting louder, demanding blood. Soldiers raised their spears from the edges of the arena, ready to force the beast into rage if needed. Rylan didn't have time to think. He crouched quickly by the chains, his hands moving as they always had when faced with metal. He traced the weak spots, the stress points, the tiny fractures hidden beneath the glow. His mind worked faster than fear, faster than logic. The lock was alien, but locks were always the same. They were puzzles, and he knew how to solve puzzles. "Don't kill me," he muttered as he worked. "Let me free you." The crowd gasped as sparks flew. Rylan's fingers had pulled a small tool from his belt, hidden even through his capture. It wasn't a weapon, just a mechanic's cutter, but in his hands it was enough. The first chain snapped loose. The predator froze. The alien guards shouted, rushing toward the arena floor. Rylan didn't stop. Another lock clicked free. Another chain fell. The ground shook as the beast moved, stretching muscles that had been bound for years. And then it happened. The predator could have torn him apart. It could have ripped him in two before he even drew another breath. But it didn't. Instead, the massive creature swung its head toward the approaching alien guards. It let out a roar so powerful the very metal under Rylan's boots rattled. The crowd went silent for a heartbeat, stunned by what they were seeing. A chained beast never spared its victim. Yet this one had chosen to stand beside him. The guards advanced with energy spears, but the predator's chains shattered with the final strike of Rylan's cutter. Now unbound, the creature slammed its claw into the ground, sending soldiers sprawling. It was free, truly free, for the first time in years. And instead of fleeing, instead of lashing at Rylan, it stepped in front of him, like a wall of muscle and fury shielding the human mechanic from harm. Ryland's chest heaved as he looked up at the predator. The alien warlord in the highest seat stood in shock, his expression unreadable. The crowd screamed, some in terror, some in awe. None of them could understand why the beast had spared the human. None of them could see what Ryland saw, that in the beast's glowing eyes, something had changed. No longer enslaved, no longer just a predator. It had made a choice, and in that choice, Ryland realized his life had just changed forever. The arena was chaos. Alien guards shouted in panic, their weapons glowing as they tried to surround the freed predator. The crowd roared louder than before, some chanting for blood, others screaming in fear. Ryland stood frozen, his small cutter still warm in his hand, while the predator beast towered above him. Muscles rippling and eyes burning red, the warlord on the high throne slammed his fist against the armrest, barking commands in his guttural tongue. Soldiers rushed forward in perfect formation, their armored suits gleaming in the arena's light. They had fought this predator before, and their weapons had been designed to control it. Ryland realized that if they closed in, they would try to chain the beast again or kill it if needed. The predator growled, lowering itself protectively in front of Ryland, its claws carved into the ground as it prepared to fight. Ryland's heart hammered. He had no plan. He had only meant to free the creature from suffering, never imagining he would be standing behind it as an army advanced. Yet something in him refused to back away. The first wave of soldiers lunged with electrified spears. The predator moved like a storm. One swipe of its massive claw sent 3 soldiers flying across the sand. Another soldier tried to stab from the side, but the beast's tail lashed out, striking him down in an instant. The chains that once bound it now clattered uselessly on the ground, and every movement shook the arena with power. The crowd gasped at the display of raw strength. But what struck Ryland most was that the predator never once turned on him. Even in its fury, it kept itself between the mechanic and the alien guards. Ryland's throat went dry as the thought sank in. The beast was protecting him. Why me? He whispered under his breath. Why not run? The predator snarled, its glowing eyes flicking back to meet his for a single moment before slamming another soldier into the ground. It was as if the beast had chosen him deliberately, not out of chance, but out of instinct. The warlord finally stood from his throne, his voice booming across the arena. The alien tongue carried command and threat. But Ryland caught fragments of words he had learned in captivity, guardian, chosen, human. The warlord's face was twisted in both anger and disbelief. Ryland barely had time to think before a larger group of guards entered, this time armed with heavier weapons, plasma rifles that glowed with deadly blue light. The predator roared in challenge, but Ryland could see it bleeding now, scorched lines across its fur from earlier battles. Even with its strength, the beast could not withstand endless attacks. And so, for the first time, Ryland stepped forward. He had no weapon but his voice. Raising his arms, he shouted in the alien language as best he could, his words clumsy but loud enough to echo. Stop! Beast is free. Beast is not weapon. Beast is guardian. The arena fell into silence for a breath. The warlord narrowed his eyes, his soldiers hesitating at the command of a mere human. Then the predator roared once more, standing tall beside Ryland, its chest heaving, its scars glowing brighter as if in agreement with the words. The crowd erupted, their chants shifting, some calling out the word the warlord had used, guardian. The sound rolled through the arena like fire spreading through dry grass. Ryland's knees trembled. He had not expected his words to take root, but the alien audience seemed caught between fury and awe. The warlord snarled and raised his hand again, clearly preparing to order the human's death. But something in the atmosphere had changed. The predator bent down, lowering its massive head close to Ryland. Its hot breath washed over him as it let out a low rumble. almost like a growl but softer, closer to a vow. Raylan reached out, his hand brushing the thick fur, and the beast did not pull away. In that moment, before thousands of eyes, an unspoken bond was forged. Man and beast, mechanic and predator, prisoner and war guardian. The warlord slammed his staff against the floor, shouting to drown out the crowd's chant. Soldiers advanced again, this time with killing intent. The air filled with the hum of charged plasma. Raylan felt his stomach twist, but the predator stepped forward, ready to fight to the death at his side. For the first time in his life, Raylan wasn't fixing machines or repairing broken engines. He was standing at the center of a war he never chose, with the most dangerous creature in the galaxy now fighting for him, and the galaxy had just witnessed it. The moment the soldiers raised their plasma rifles, the arena turned into a battlefield. Bright blue bolts of energy shot across the sand, sizzling through the air. The predator's massive body twisted and leapt, moving with shocking speed for its size. Its claws sliced through alien armor like paper, its tail whipping soldiers into the walls. Raylan ducked behind a shattered pillar, his heart racing. He had freed the beast, but he knew that if they stayed in the arena, both of them would die. The warlord's army was endless, and no amount of strength could hold them off forever. His mind worked the way it always did in emergencies, not as a fighter, but as a mechanic. He scanned the arena quickly, searching for weak spots, for exits, for anything that could be used. High above, he spotted service gates, meant for moving machines in and out of the arena floor. Locked, guarded, and sealed with heavy alien tech. But Raylan knew locks better than anyone. If they could get there, he could break it. The predator roared, slamming a soldier to the ground with bone-shattering force. Sparks burst around it as plasma fire struck its thick hide. It was bleeding now, dark crimson dripping into the sand. Raylan's chest tightened. He had never cared for anything outside machines, but watching the beast take blow after blow to protect him lit a fire in his chest. He sprinted out from cover, waving his arms. "Here, this way," he shouted, pointing toward the service gates. The predator's glowing eyes locked onto him, then followed his gesture. With a furious roar, it lunged forward, plowing through the soldiers like a living, battering ram. Raylan ran beside it, his legs burning, dodging debris and plasma bolts that scorched the sand at his heels. The crowd screamed above, some cheering, some crying out in rage. The warlord bellowed from his throne, his voice booming like thunder. He would not allow a human and a freed beast to embarrass him before his empire. He barked an order, and suddenly, massive steel barriers began to rise from the ground, blocking the exits. Raylan's stomach dropped. They were being trapped inside. But he didn't stop running. "No machine is perfect," he muttered, forcing himself to focus. Not even theirs. The predator reached the barrier first, its claws scraping against the glowing alien steel. It snarled in frustration, slamming its massive fists into the wall, but it held strong. Soldiers closed in behind them, forming a circle. Raylan pressed his hand against the control lock. Alien symbols glowed faintly, pulsing with power. To anyone else, it was impossible. To Raylan, it was just another puzzle. He pulled the cutter from his belt and worked furiously, sparks flying as he jammed the tool into circuits, forcing connections, breaking others. His breath came fast, every second feeling like an eternity. The predator stood over him, swiping at soldiers that dared to come near. Its roar shook the entire barrier, but its wounds were growing deeper. Raylan's hands shook, but he didn't let go. Come on," he whispered. The lock flickered, symbols flashing red, then green. With a hiss of steam, the barrier groaned and split apart, opening just enough for them to pass. "Move!" Raylan shouted. The predator charged through the gap, its massive frame smashing the weakened barrier wide open. Raylan stumbled after it, his lungs burning. They burst into the maintenance tunnels beneath the arena, leaving the chaos of the stadium behind them. The tunnels were dark, filled with pipes, steam, and alien machinery humming with energy. The Predator slowed, its chest heaving, blood dripping down its side. Raylan reached out, his hands trembling, not from fear this time, but from concern. He touched the beast's fur lightly. "You saved me," he said quietly. "Now let me save you." The Predator's glowing eyes softened for a brief moment, and it lowered its massive head toward him. Raylan tore a strip from his own clothing, pressing it against one of the bleeding wounds. He was no medic, but he knew how to patch leaks, how to stop a system from failing. He treated the beast like he would treat a broken engine, with care, with focus, with determination. Above them, the roar of the crowd and the warlord's fury still echoed. The Empire would not forget this day. Raylan knew they were being hunted now, both of them. A human mechanic and an alien predator, an impossible pair. But as the beast leaned against him, letting him patch the wounds, Raylan realized something. For the first time, he wasn't just fixing a machine. He was fixing the future, and whatever came next, they would face it together. The tunnel stretched like a maze beneath the arena, lit only by dim red lights and leaking steam from broken pipes. Every sound echoed, the heavy breathing of the Predator, Raylan's uneven steps, and the distant pounding of armored boots chasing them. The alien soldiers would not stop. They would hunt them through the tunnels, through the city, through the ends of the galaxy if they had to. The warlord's pride had been wounded, and pride was deadlier than any blade. Raylan pressed his hand against the wall, forcing himself to think. He wasn't a soldier, but he knew machines, and these tunnels were full of them. Strange power lines, pumping systems, vents that hissed with alien gases, all pieces of a system that could be bent or broken. He turned to the Predator, whose glowing eyes flickered in the dark. Its wounds still bled, but it stood tall, alert, as if daring the shadows themselves to attack. "Listen," Raylan whispered, though he wasn't sure the beast could truly understand him. "If they catch us, they'll chain you again. Or worse. So we have to stay ahead." The Predator growled low in its throat, as though agreeing. It nudged him gently with its massive head, urging him forward. They moved quickly through the pipes and shadows, Raylan guiding them by instinct more than direction. He listened for the hum of engines, the flow of power. Soon, he found what he was looking for, a maintenance hub filled with machinery, its panels glowing with alien symbols. The Predator stood guard at the doorway, its muscles tense. As Raylan crouched by the consoles, boots echoed closer, voices shouting in the alien tongue. They were almost here. Raylan's fingers flew across wires and circuits, cutting some, crossing others. Sparks shot up, and the tunnel shook. Suddenly, the lights flickered out, plunging the world into darkness. Steam hissed loudly from vents as doors slammed shut across the passageways. He had rerouted the system, trapping the soldiers behind heavy locks. Their angry shouts rattled through the metal walls, but they could not reach him now. Raylan leaned back, panting. The Predator let out a soft growl that almost sounded like approval. For a moment, silence returned. But silence never lasted long. The Predator's ears twitched, its glowing eyes snapping toward another tunnel. Raylan followed its gaze, and his blood ran cold. Shapes moved in the dark, taller, heavier than soldiers. These weren't guards. These were hunters. The warlord had unleashed his personal war beasts, armored creatures bred only for pursuit and slaughter. Four-legged monsters with glowing spines and jaws dripping with acid. Their growls echoed, low and deadly. The Predator stepped forward, its chest rumbling with a roar that shook the walls. The hunters answered with snarls of their own, their eyes glowing like tiny flames in the dark. Raylan swallowed hard. He knew the Predator could fight, but it was already injured, and these hunters were many. He forced himself to think like a mechanic, not prey. The tunnel was lined with pipes, pumping high-pressure gas. If he could rupture them at the right time. Yes. His mind worked furiously. Hold them, he whispered. The predator growled as if it understood, lowering its body into a stance of battle. The hunters charged, their claws striking sparks on the metal floor. The predator met them with a roar, slamming into the first with bone-crushing force. Raylan's cutter sparked against the nearest pipe. Pressure hissed, then burst, filling the tunnel with thick white steam. The world vanished into mist. The hunters snarled, blinded, confused. The predator moved like a shadow, striking from the fog, claws tearing through armored hides. Raylan ducked low, sparks flying as he cut another pipe. The hiss grew louder, building into a deafening roar. Then the gas ignited from a stray plasma bolt. The tunnel exploded in a wave of fire. Raylan was thrown hard against the floor, heat washing over him. His ears rang, smoke filling his lungs. When he pushed himself up, the hunters lay broken and burning in the flames. The predator stood over him, its fur scorched but its eyes still glowing strong. For a long moment, man and beast stared at each other through the haze of smoke. The predator bowed its head slightly, as though acknowledging Raylan's role in the fight. For the first time, Raylan felt like more than a prisoner, more than a mechanic. He was part of something larger. He looked back toward the path ahead. The Empire would not stop hunting them. But as long as the predator stood at his side, and as long as his hands could turn machines against their masters, they had a chance. Together, they were no longer prey. Together, they were something new, something the galaxy would never forget. The smoke of the tunnel still clung to Raylan's lungs when they emerged into the night. For the first time since the arena, he felt cool air on his face. Above them, the alien city glowed with harsh neon lights and towers that stretched toward the stars. But instead of awe, Raylan felt the weight of danger. They were not free, not yet. The warlord's soldiers would spread across every street, every rooftop, until no place remained to hide. The predator padded beside him, its massive paws shaking the ground. The glow of its scars pulsed faintly, weaker now after so much fighting. Raylan slowed, touching its fur gently. "You can't keep bleeding like this," he whispered. The beast huffed through its nostrils, almost impatient, as if telling him not to worry. But Raylan worried anyway. They slipped into the shadows between towers, the city alive with alien voices and glowing vehicles that drifted above the streets. From high platforms, holographic banners of the warlord's face glared down. Orders in the alien tongue rang through loudspeakers. The human and the predator were fugitives, traitors, enemies of the Empire. Rewards promised for their capture. Raylan's stomach twisted. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't even brave. He was just a mechanic who once spent his days fixing broken engines. But now he was carrying the hope of something far greater, and that terrified him. The predator nudged him again, forcing him onward. Its glowing eyes scanned the alleys, its muscles tense. Raylan realized the beast wasn't just protecting him anymore. It was watching everything, guiding their path, as if it knew the city better than he did. Perhaps it had been caged here long before, forced through these streets as a weapon. They moved through a narrow marketplace, abandoned at night. The stalls were dark, but the scent of strange spices lingered in the air. Raylan crouched to catch his breath, pulling a panel loose from one of the market's power conduits. Sparks flickered as he tinkered quickly, using his cutter and bare hands. The predator tilted its head curiously as Raylan worked. "If they track us, we need shadows," he murmured. With a final twist, the marketplace lights blinked out, leaving only darkness. Now the city's hunters would have a harder time finding them. But the silence didn't last. A group of armored soldiers entered from the far side of the market, scanning with bright searchlights. The predator growled low, ready to leap, but Raylan grabbed its fur. "No, not yet," he whispered. Fighting every squad would only burn the beast out. They needed another way. The soldiers spread out, boots clanking on the metal ground. One drew closer, his light sweeping across the empty stalls. Just before it found them, Raylan pulled a loose wire from the conduit and jammed it against the ground. Sparks shot up like fireworks. The soldiers spun toward the sound, weapons raised. In that instant, Raylan and the Predator slipped into another alley, silent as shadows. When they finally stopped, the city stretched wide before them. Beyond the towers, Raylan could see the faint outline of the spaceport. Ships glowed faintly on the horizon. If they could reach it, maybe, just maybe, they could escape this world. But the path there was long and crawling with guards. The Predator lowered itself beside him, its glowing eyes fixed on the distant port. For the first time, Raylan noticed something strange in its stare. It wasn't just instinct. It wasn't just survival. The beast looked at the ships as though it understood what freedom meant. Raylan pressed a hand against its scarred hide. "You're not just an animal," he whispered. "You're more than they ever let you be." The Predator rumbled softly, lowering its massive head until it was level with him. For a moment, human and beast simply breathed together under the glow of alien lights. In the stillness, Raylan felt the bond between them tighten, becoming unbreakable. But in the distance, alarms began to wail. The Empire had tightened its net. Dozens of lights rose into the night sky as patrol ships swept out from the towers. The warlord's voice boomed across the city, promising vengeance. Raylan stood slowly, his cutter in hand, his heart pounding. He had never felt smaller, but he had also never felt stronger. Because now he wasn't alone. The Predator growled, muscles coiled, ready for whatever came. And for the first time, Raylan thought that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy would remember, not the warlord's wrath. But the night a mechanic and a beast stood together against an empire. The alarms grew louder, spreading across the alien city like rolling thunder. Searchlights cut through the night, sweeping across towers and streets. Soldiers marched in squads, and patrol ships hovered in the skies. Everywhere, the Empire searched for them. Raylan crouched in the shadows of a broken stairway, the Predator beside him. The beast's breath came out in low growls, its glowing scars flickering faintly. It was wounded, but its eyes still burned with fire. Raylan touched its fur, his jaw tightening. "We can't keep running," he whispered. "If we're caught, they'll chain you again. If we fight, we might die. But if we reach that port—" The Predator huffed, almost like it understood. Its gaze locked on the glowing silhouette of the spaceport in the distance. That was freedom. That was hope. They moved again, slipping through alleys, past broken walls and abandoned courtyards. Twice they nearly stumbled into patrols. Twice Raylan's quick thinking and the Predator's instincts saved them. But when they finally reached the open plaza before the port, his heart sank. The warlord was waiting. He stood tall in gleaming black armor, a curved staff in one hand. Around him, dozens of soldiers formed a ring, their weapons glowing, their armor shining under the floodlights. Above, a massive dropship hovered, its cannons locked on the plaza. There would be no sneaking past this. The warlord's voice thundered across the square. "Human, you dare defy me? You free what belongs to the Empire. That beast is ours. It has spilled blood for centuries. You are nothing, and you will die here." The crowd of aliens that had followed from the arena now filled the plaza edges, watching in silence. Their eyes were fixed not on the warlord, but on the human and the Predator who stood together against him. Raylan's throat tightened. His hands shook, but he forced himself to stand tall. He had no weapon but his cutter, no armor but his dirty mechanic's suit. And yet, the Predator stepped forward, placing its massive body protectively in front of him. The warlord raised his staff. "Kill them both." The soldiers advanced. Plasma bolts filled the air like lightning. The Predator roared, charging into the storm. It moved with fury and grace, smashing soldiers aside, tearing weapons apart with claws and teeth. Sparks lit the night. Raylan ducked low, sprinting toward the dropship's control terminal. He had no plan but one. If he could disrupt the power, if he could blind their cannons, the Predator might have a chance. His cutter sparked against wires, his hands trembling but fast. Circuits fried, alarms shrieked, and the dropship's lights flickered before shutting down. The cannons powered off with a groan. The crowd gasped dot, but the Predator was faltering. Plasma fire burned across its side, and its roars grew weaker. Raylan spun just in time to see the warlord striding forward, his staff glowing with deadly energy. The Predator tried to rise but collapsed to one knee. Raylan's chest tightened. He couldn't lose it. Not after everything. He stepped between the warlord and the beast, raising his cutter as if it were a sword. His voice cracked, but he shouted anyway, "You'll have to go through me." The warlord sneered. A human mechanic? Pathetic. He swung his staff downward. But before it struck, the Predator surged forward with one final roar, slamming into the warlord with the force of a storm. The staff cracked against the ground, shattering stone. The warlord was thrown back, crashing into his soldiers. Silence fell. The Predator stood over Raylan, its chest heaving, blood dripping. Slowly, painfully, it raised its head to the crowd. Its glowing eyes scanned them all, then lowered to Raylan. The crowd murmured, voices rising, repeating one word again and again, "Guardian." The warlord tried to rise, but his soldiers hesitated. They had seen what the Empire's might could not break, a bond between human and beast. A mechanic and a Predator who fought not for chains, but for each other. Raylan placed his hand on the beast's scarred hide. "No more cages," he said firmly. His voice was quiet, but the words carried through the silent plaza. "Not for you. Not for me." The Predator rumbled softly, lowering its massive head until it pressed against Raylan's chest. The warlord's grip over the crowd wavered. In that moment, a legend was born. With the crowd's chant rising, the soldiers did not advance. The warlord's face twisted with fury, but even he could see it. The Empire had lost something far greater than a beast. It had lost its fear. Raylan and the Predator limped toward the spaceport, step by step, side by side. They had no plan, no promise of safety, but they had something stronger than chains and armies. They had each other dot, and from that night forward, the galaxy would remember not the warlord's threats, but the story of a human mechanic and a Predator who became a guardian, bound not by force, but by choice.